This box represents the regulatory baseline, labeled use. An authorized medicine is strictly bound by 4 parameters: indication, dose, route, and patient population. But clinical reality rarely stays inside those lines. Medicines reach patients outside these boundaries every day. This gap between how a medicine is approved to be used and how it is actually applied in the field generates a massive proportion of the safety signals that matter most to pharmacovigilance professionals. While every deviation from the label can generate a reportable adverse event, the underlying human behaviors driving those events are entirely different from one another. To accurately process a case safety report, you must diagnose the exact nature of the deviation. Understanding a signal's specific root cause is the only way to deploy the correct regulatory and risk minimization response. We can map out non-standard use by building a matrix around 3 variables: initiator, intentionality, and goal. The first category is medication errors. These unintentional deviations are initiated by a clinician or patient in pursuit of a therapeutic goal. These errors do not arise from the inherent pharmacological risks of the drug itself. They are preventable system failures. System failures typically occur at 6 nodes: prescribing, ordering, transcribing, dispensing, administering, and monitoring. A dispensing error can be fatal. In Mumbai, a patient died after receiving cytotoxic Folatrax instead of the supplement Folamax simply due to similar brand names. That mechanism is entirely different from an administration error. Giving potassium chloride orally is standard medical practice. Administering that exact same molecule intravenously causes cardiac arrest. Because the root cause here is a system failure, the pharmacovigilance response requires process corrections, like packaging alerts or modifying pharmacy protocols, rather than altering the drug's established safety profile. Returning to the matrix, we must delineate deviations that are fully intentional yet still aim for a positive health outcome. This defines off-label use. It is a deliberate departure from the approved parameters, initiated specifically by a clinician for clinical reasons. In fields like oncology and pediatrics, real-world evidence frequently outpaces official label updates. A drug approved for one tumor type may have compelling trial data supporting its use in another long before regulators update the official documentation. The risk is that adverse events in an off-label population may not match the product's reference safety information. Pharmacovigilance teams must rigorously track this exposure to calculate accurate incidence rates. Misuse shares the exact same intentionality and therapeutic goal as off-label use, but the initiator changes. Misuse is driven by the patient. A patient chronically taking excessive doses of an over-the-counter analgesic to manage joint pain is deliberately breaking the dosing protocol, but they are doing it in pursuit of better symptom control. Both off-label use and misuse retain therapeutic intent, but misidentifying who initiated the behavior will result in aiming your risk minimization measures at the wrong stakeholder. Moving to the final row of our matrix, we categorize abuse as patient-initiated and intentional, but explicitly lacking any therapeutic intent. The user is actively seeking a psychoactive effect. This often involves bypassing standard delivery routes and frequently includes polydrug combinations that trigger severe, unpredictable pharmacokinetic interactions. While abuse is an episodic behavioral act, chronic exposure produces a physiological adaptation. As this diagram shows, cell receptors actively downregulating to compensate for the constant presence of drug molecules. This state is physical dependence. When the drug is suddenly removed, those biological compensations are left completely unopposed, triggering a predictable and severe physical withdrawal syndrome. But physical dependence is distinctly separate from addiction. As this neurological map highlights, addiction specifically targets the dopaminergic reward circuitry in the brain. These alterations drive compulsive, drug-seeking behavior. The patient continues to pursue the substance despite clear, significant harm to their health and social functioning. Because pre-authorization trials are strictly controlled and often short-term, post-market spontaneous reports provide the primary evidence base for a pharmacovigilance team to detect a drug's true dependence liability. Finally, we must account for structural deviations. As this timeline illustrates, extreme clinical urgency sometimes dictates that drugs bypass the standard regulatory authorization framework entirely. One route is named patient use. This is a physician-led supply pathway, designed to address the unmet clinical need of a specific individual patient, utilizing a drug that is not authorized in their market. When that unapproved access is scaled up from a single individual to broader patient populations with life-threatening conditions, it is classified under frameworks like compassionate use in the EU or expanded access in the US. During a declared public health crisis, regulators can issue an emergency use authorization. This is deployed when the known and potential benefits of an unapproved product clearly outweigh the known risks. An emergency authorization relies on data from ongoing or recently completed trials. Full approval demands a mature dataset, extensive long-term safety follow-up, and comprehensive manufacturing reviews. Because these special pathways depend on a lower evidentiary standard up front, their post-authorization surveillance obligations become the definitive safety net for the public. Across all global regulatory bodies, the mandate remains absolute. An adverse event is always reportable, regardless of whether the drug was misprescribed, abused, or taken off-label. But processing those cases creates a professional pitfall. Teams sometimes assume that because all cases must be reported, they can all be treated as functionally equivalent. As this diagram shows, data from every category of our deviation matrix must feed into aggregate safety reports, like PSERs and PBRERs. Excluding misuse or off-label events from these analyses severely distorts incidence calculations and corrupts the entire safety picture. Accurately classifying these inputs at the start allows teams to produce highly specific, targeted risk minimization outputs at the end. The causal mechanism dictates the action. Because a medication error intervention cannot resolve an abuse signal, this taxonomy establishes the foundation of patient safety.